Listen, we all know what it's like to run our business based on feelings rather than facts. And if you don't, I actually don't think you're an entrepreneur. But what if I told you that there's a powerful ally that can transform drama into decisions, chaos into clarity, and guesswork that happens accidentally into growth? And today we are diving deep with a dear friend. He's an Air Force veteran, and I would call him a data visionary, my dear friend Collin Graves, to discover how when you start to master your metrics, it's the true key to unlocking sustainable business success. So welcome back to the Mind of George Show. This is a place where entrepreneurs discover that true scaling isn't about hacks or tactics. It's about aligning your mindset, aligning your messaging, and aligning your marketing to create sustainable growth that feels authentic and aligned to who you are. Our job is to help you cut through the noise, to help you build a business that matters and make money doing it. And so I think it's important to understand why the information in this episode today is so powerful. I have studies from McKinsey that say data-driven companies are 23% more profitable. 78% of business decisions are still made on gut feeling alone from Harvard Business Review, which means we're cutting into profit and we're preventing our results. And there has been a lot of research and studies shown that entrepreneurs, including what I've noticed with my clients and with myself, who review their data daily, tend to scale 3 times faster. And so what data gives us, it gives us an insight into what's now, but also what's to come, because we can find trends and we can spot them. And so in today's episode, we get real about why your business data is your most important ally, how to shift from reactive to proactive decision-making, how to build a sustainable relationship with your numbers, the difference between busy work and deliberate work, and how to use data to validate your entrepreneurial instincts or those feelings that we were talking about earlier. And so you got to remember that data is your business co-pilot, not your dictator. You're not just an entrepreneur. You're a capital allocator. That capital is your time, it's your money, it's your resources. And so there's a lot that we covered in this. We covered frameworks, daily check-ins, how to discover strategic versus busy work. And so whether you love spreadsheets or you run from them screaming, which is me, this conversation with Collin will transform how you view your business data. And Collin brings this really down-to-earth, fresh, human perspective that makes data accessible and, most importantly, fun, because this is the first time I've ever enjoyed talking about it, actionable, and I will say it, exciting. And so if you are an entrepreneur who's ready to move beyond gut decisions and scale faster, will get more profit, if you are tired of the reactive firefighting and not knowing what's next and how it's coming, if you want to scale sustainably, or you want to be able to make better, more clear, less emotional decisions, this episode's for you. And so without further ado, let's jump into the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. And today we're going to be talking about data over drama. But before we do, I got to give this guest his street cred over here, because unlike me, he signed the right dotted line. And he is an Air Force veteran. He didn't make this mistake of joining Uncle Sam's Mobile Carnival like I did. So we've been talking and laughing and sharing stories before we started. But he's also the proverbial entrepreneur who's been in the online business space and even like data consulting since 2007, which some of you didn't even know that existed back then. Newsflash, Instagram wasn't around. Facebook still didn't exist. We were in the early stages. And so he has been doing this game for a long time, has navigated the ups, the downs, and now is a massive success. He owns a data-driven company, which we're going to be talking about today. He founded North Labs, and it is absolutely incredible about empowering people to use data. He's helped over 1,000 organizations transform their companies by understanding the dirty little secret in the closet that all of us avoid, which is data. And I will be the first one to admit that is not my specialty. It is not my happy place. So I'm just excited that people like Collin live in the world. And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome Collin to the show. Collin, welcome.
Thanks, man. Great to be here. And we'll get you converted. Don't worry.
Well, I don't need to, because I have you.
That's true.
So this is where I've learned that it's like, no, it's who, not how. Mm-hmm. And my brain does not work like that. You want to talk about marketing theory, you want to talk about customer journey, big picture vision, great. You want me to pull my hair that I don't have out, put me in front of like a spreadsheet or data, or even like custom dashboards used to give me like aneurysms, and like, no, I know what's on there, but they don't compute for me.
Well, yeah, we'd make a good one too then, because
1,000%.
the theoretical stuff I enjoy, but I'm definitely not, I'm not as sharp at as I am around building systems and answering questions with stuff that's in front of us. So
1,000%. Yeah. And I'm stoked for this too. We were talking before the show, and I think all of us, maybe even you included, I know I have, is I can look back at every smash my face against a wall moment as an entrepreneur. And in looking back in hindsight, it's because I was reacting to drama, and no point in that conversation was data ever a part of that conversation. It was an emotional roller coaster. It was like, oh, everything's on fire, right? So from your perspective as somebody who lives in data and sees entrepreneurs, sees businesses all the way up to like giant caliber businesses that you help, can you just kind of give us your thoughts on the importance of data over drama and like take us to church?
Data is the new gold. There's no doubt about it. Maybe you're a crude oil fan. Data's the new oil. Whatever, however you want to lay it out. We're entering an era. We've been flirting with this era for a while. So the organizations that have taken control of their data capabilities over the last 10 years have outpaced those who haven't. That's been shown statistically over and over again. But what I will say is we're now entering an era with the advent of generative AI and a lot more focus on leveraging AI for automation, for analysis, whatever the case may be. We're entering this period where it's going to be really tough to put that off any longer. And those who do put it off are probably rendering themselves to limited growth, limited market expansion over the next decade. Speaking as the most biased person in the room, of course, but
at least you own it.
Yeah, but there's just significant value to be extracted from any sort of business, whether you're home services, whether you're super complex auto manufacturing, or anywhere in between. Your data is, or your organization produces more data than is almost fathomable at this point. Every single tool you use to run your business, whether it's QuickBooks, whether it's your CRM, whether it's super complex technology, it's producing mountains of data that have the ingredients to help you solve business problems. So my whole cachet is every business problem is a data problem. You have the answers somewhere within your business. You may just not have the ability to call that data and actually answer it. So yeah, you end up making judgment or gut-based decisions, which I think is necessary, especially in the early days of running a company, because at that point, you don't have enough data to make logical decisions. It has to be the entrepreneur's fire and their drive. And yes, probably falling down a whole bunch. The whole reason I have this beard is to hide all of the scars I've collected over the years. And I'm not talking from the military. But once you get into a growth stage organization, that's really the time to take a step back and say, is our house in order from a data capabilities perspective? Because as you grow, data actually becomes more valuable because it compounds on itself, right? So our whole push for growth stage organizations is you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to completely turn your business upside down, but you do need a sidekick in place. And that sidekick is your data, because your data can ground you and it can help you avoid monumental disasters when your gut calls are wrong. And at the very least, it can be leveraged as a sort of point of sanity for you, because as you very well know, and I've been on this grind for 2 companies, 18 years. Oh my God, there's always something. And so your data can really act as like that insulation for you to say, now's not the time to worry about this. The data is still showing that we're okay. Or data is showing that it's okay, but the predictions that we're able to use show that a quarter from now, this is going to be more serious. So maybe we get ahead of it, right? So I just think it's a necessary part of the lifeblood of an organization. And, I'm just excited for the future. I'm honored that we've been able to help as many customers as we have. But I feel like we're just getting started.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to go and I'm going to give myself a data class with you, right? Like I'm going to make myself student N0 or patient 0 over here. Because I do remember doing a podcast on this a couple of months ago where you just hit a very valid point. And the way that you just described data is data is like this teammate that's on your team. It's not driving every decision, but it's like having a second man or a second woman to like bounce ideas off and keep you grounded. And to your point is like, sometimes you have to act in your intuition. Sometimes you have to go do that, but really it's using data to drive those decisions. And so I think in what I'm even hearing you say is when you and I started growing up in the industry, right? Because I was like 3 years later than you, like 2010. The way that we saw data was like, just collect everything, right? It's like, just collect everything, right? And you're like, oh, what are you talking about? And now we live in this world where like we have tools that can help analyze it. And to your point, get predictive about it. But like, what do you consider, like, how would you define data for an entrepreneur?
Data is any representation of a state of your systems at any point, anywhere, right? So when you think about your CRM, there's obvious things in there like customer data, opportunity data. For more complex organizations, you might have bill of material data, you might have work order data, whatever the case may be. And that's really great. But now imagine a world where you can get the data that lives within your CRM to talk to the data that lives in your accounting software or your marketing software. And now you have the ability to track how a dollar flows through your business from the moment a deal is closed to executing on the contract, paying employees, paying contractors, paying for service, external services, whatever the case may be, really being able to track where each dollar is flowing through the business so you can optimize over time. Most businesses, and certainly small businesses, live in a position where they're only able to really drive strategic change with their data on a monthly or quarterly basis. Why? Because you have month-end book close with your accounting team, and you have quarterly financial reviews. So imagine steering a cruise ship, but only being able to turn the steering wheel 90 or 180 degrees at a time. You're making really big inputs into the steering wheel, right? And so for anyone on board, whether they're crew or not, they're barfing over the ledge, right? Because there's forces that go into making those input changes, right? I race cars as a part of another life. If I were to turn my wheel 90 degrees in a straight, I'm likely doing a barrel roll to my doom, right? So now if you have the ability to make micro corrections of that wheel, you have a lot smoother journey. You're still able to navigate obstacles. You're more efficiently able to arrive at your final destination because you're not weaving all over the Atlantic, right?
It's a really good visual.
Yeah. So that's what flying plane, same thing. If you put a big old, input into the stick, you're likely grabbing that doggy bag, right? Or you're having to very quickly back out of that input and go the other direction. And that's, just being around small businesses like I have for the last 2 decades, that's pretty common. Hey, we're going to go this direction. And it doesn't work for a month or two, and we get really uneasy, and our gut says, bail out, because our survival instincts kick in. And then you go, nah, let's bring it back the other way. Well, everyone on your team, all the systems, your customers are all going, what in the hell is going on? But if you could start making small inputs toward a future state that you as the visionary of your business have your sights set on, now all of a sudden it's a lot smoother, it's a lot calmer, and you're able to understand all along the way, yes, we are on the right course, because maybe when we get to this final state, our profit margin will have improved by 10 points. But every little change I make, we're seeing a 0.5 point improvement, right? So I know that I can keep flirting with that change and it's going to work out. And if ever I get to an extreme or a limit and I start to see that margin performance diminish, guess what? My future state wasn't 6 blocks away. It might've been 4 blocks away. And now I'm in a much improved state relative to where I was. And that you're only going to arrive at that conclusion by referencing your data.
I also just have to give credit and acknowledgement to your 20 years of entrepreneurship, because for anybody who listened to that, that is not just about data. That is about every single aspect of your life, of your business, of improvement, of physical health, of finances, of finding clients. Like that section of the answer of like, what is data is like wisdom crammed in a fortune cookie in a 5-minute stint right there, that I would take and run with it. And I want to ask you a question about it, because you did hit this, and I love the analogy. I'm so visual, right? Like seeing and imagining those course corrects, and I feel so called out. I'm sweating a little bit right now on my entrepreneurial journey of like, oh, baby with the bathwater, up, going here, up, giving the company away, up,
It's
launching
normal.
another one.
It's normal,
right?
Yeah.
And I think about that now. And so as somebody for you, like who has been an entrepreneur for 20 years and now you see this, you use data, is there any level, quote unquote, of entrepreneurship that people shouldn't be at least aware of their data or knowing data? Is first question. And then at these different levels, like how can people start to build a relationship with their data, right? Because I think for you and I, we've been in that time where like everybody thought data was open rates, right? Oh, what's the click rate? What's this, right? And it was just like this surface wrapping paper. So I'd love to know is like, do you foresee any person that maybe is just starting out and doing 5 figures a year, or they're at 6 figures inconsistently, that they shouldn't use data? And then regardless of that answer, like how does somebody start to build a relationship with their data?
Those are great questions. To answer your first question, there is no point in time where you shouldn't know your data. Everyone who listens to your show has seen an episode of Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And I listen, and I'm an angel investor in another life, and I sit in on pitches all the time. And George, you know this answer. What's the most important thing that investors look for?
Data.
You know your numbers, right?
Yep.
You can have the best, most revolutionary vision of what you're going to build and what it's going to do and all that stuff. But if you want my money, you need to tell me the inputs required to generate the outputs for my money, right? So understanding customer acquisition cost, understanding how much money you make when you acquire a customer, AKA lifetime value, or renewal rates. How many people are repurchasing from you? What's your referral coefficient? Not virality coefficient, but how many people are telling their friends that this product is awesome? I don't care if you sell sticks of deodorant. Every guy sweats, right? How can we measure how many people George is telling about this awesome deodorant stick that we brought to market? What's your return rate? What's, your ROAS, right? Return on ad spend. Whatever the case may be, you have to understand what that looks like. Those numbers I have down pat at all times. I know that it takes me $16,000 to acquire a new customer. I know that our average lifetime value of a customer is $275,000. I know that of that 275, we will grow 73.8% of that top line into below the cost of services fold on our accounting ledger. These are just things that ingrain with you over time. And yes, those numbers change, particularly when you move from being a solo entrepreneur to having a team, right? So you always have to be willing to adjust your understanding of those numbers, because lifetime value, or especially profit margin, overhead costs, all of those change dramatically the second you bring on an employee. But the benefit to that is obviously you have more input power, right? So you might be sacrificing margin performance for a brief period of time, But if that means that you can bring on more revenue, that is performance revenue, and you can have customers around longer because now you have someone to reach out to in customer service, right? Those are all bets, those little micro bets that you're taking. But that's where your data can help you understand whether you're going in the right direction or not. If I hire George and I see in 3 months that my revenue and profits dropping and my retention's dropping, my returns are going up, and the people who are surveyed say, yeah, customer service, I'd rather work with this other group. Guess what? Now I have data to inform my next decision as a business owner, right? So, yeah, there's no point to running a business if you don't understand the numbers behind the business. And I say that as the most egregious tyrant of that statement back in the day. When I first started my first business, it was art, baby. It was gut. It was winging a prayer. It was, well, I see money coming into my checking account every month.
Yep.
That must be great. I'm just going to keep it going. Well, guess what? You turn around to sell that company and the acquirer goes, your margin performance is like, it's fine, but with the business that you built, it should be exceptional. I'm like, didn't know. So I had a, depressed buyout when I sold my first company because I didn't understand my numbers. Boo-hoo, right? Like I still sold my company. But it's sort of like what could have been with that. But when I started North Labs, it was like, I will understand how my numbers work. I will have them memorized. I will tattoo them on my forehead backwards if I need to. So when I look in the mirror, I can see the real numbers, whatever it takes to understand how the business flows. Because especially your financial numbers when you're small are all that matter. People want to hire their friends. They want to hire people because they want to say they have employees. I've made that mistake too. I hired, 6 people when in reality I needed 1 part-time person. And you look at those numbers and you go, wow, that's bad. Right. But unless you're paying attention to it, I would have just floated off into la la land and not had a company. Right. So, it's unfortunate to me that I went through the university, rigmarole after the military and things like that, took entrepreneurship courses, all that stuff. I even adjuncted at the University of Minnesota for a semester, but they don't teach you. I just don't feel like it goes as deep into financial literacy for entrepreneurs as we should. Like the US is bad about personal finances in general in its education curriculum, but certainly for people who want to get an entrepreneurship or business degree, you have to, I don't care if you don't like numbers. I don't care if you're not a numbers gal, right? If you're taking the plunge to run a business, your numbers are your lifeblood.
Yeah.
Right. It's the only thing that matters. And unfortunately, some of us just have to learn it through the school of hard knocks.
I'm listening to you. I'm like, there's only one of 2 ways you learn data, and it's by choice or it's by force.
Yeah.
Right. And same. And by the way, I just got to give you credit. You make data sound so much cooler than anybody else. So I'm already a bigger fan of it than before we started. And I'm like, I can listen to you talk about data all day, right? Like race car driver, pilot, throw the boardroom out, throw the suit out. I can talk about this data all day.
Yeah.
I even had a shift to where, as a father, and this is going to sound potentially weird to some people who don't have kids, but I had to start looking at my business like it was a toddler.
Yes.
Like it was this independent being that I had to raise and create things around, because I was the same way. I'm like, oh, I'll hire my brother. Oh, I'll hire my friend. Oh, you want to come on this trip with me? You can come record content of me giving this keynote. And then you fast forward a couple of years and you're like, there's a lot of commas that I don't know where they went, and I have nothing to show for them.
I like that. God, the commas I've wasted. Oh yeah. My goodness. I mean, yeah, I should have a garage full of supercars.
1,000%.
And I've donated commas to a bunch of yahoos over the years.
and even you and I growing up in this industry, I can confidently say, and this is going to make me drastically uncomfortable, I own at least 1,000 courses I never opened. 1,000.
I don't have 1,000. I probably have 50.
Because of like, I'm funnel hacking them. I'm doing marketing strategy. Oh, I'm going to check this angle. I'm going to do this. And I'm like, I would be petrified because I figured out a couple years ago, and this is a complete non sequitur, but I have to say it before asking the next question. You can go on Amazon and it will tell you your lifetime spend on Amazon. So you can pull a report and it will pull one massive spreadsheet. And at the very bottom, it tells you. And there was a season of entrepreneurship where I was like, I would have been happy if I sold my company for that amount of money. Never mind. I single-handedly cut down 6,000 trees from the jungle to box these Amazon boxes showing up to my house. And it was because I was in, like what you said, the art, right? I'm like, oh, well, it's here. And now I have a storage unit full of studio equipment because I really needed 6 cameras because the new one came out. And I love the way that you talk about data and for people knowing it. And so I have a question about this before we kind of move on to the next topic is, in this relationship with data, the analogy or the metaphor that you shared earlier of like the ship making these giant course corrections, right? I feel like something that I see happen with people that I coach is it's almost like there's no middle ground with data. It's almost like, oh, everything's an art, or I'm obsessed and almost stagnant because I'm just so addicted to my data that no action happens, right? So, you were talking about like monthly and quarterly, but like when it comes to somebody at any level building a relationship with it, how do they start to? Is it just like taking a peek at their numbers, identifying like what your marketing data is, what your ad data is, what your acquisition data is, and just being intentional once a week? Or is it having a dashboard every day? Or is it different for everybody? But like, how do people start to build a relationship with their data?
Really good question. Yeah. I think it's gonna vary not only for the entrepreneur themselves, but for the business that they're in. I think of a difference between me selling my Collin Graves mega sneakers online versus maybe running a home restoration company that deals with flood damage, where you're not getting paid out by the insurance companies for 120 days. Right. So you're going to have varying degrees of how often you need to be checking those numbers. But the point is, I think the very first thing that anyone listening to your show can do, whether they're running a fledgling business or they're running $1 billion organization, is even if you think it's beneath you, it's not. Log into at least your accounting software every single day for 3 minutes. Look at what's outstanding in your payables. Look at your cash flow statement, your profit and loss. I get it. I'm a data guy, and I think those reports are boring as hell. I get it. But they're the most important reports generated in your company, because if your accounting data isn't working, guess what? None of it's working. Your accounting data is the last bastion of business performance along your value chain. Your sales software starts at the beginning. Your marketing software, then your sales software, then whatever production systems you use to run projects, and then it's your accounting system. Your accounting system is the last bastion of responsibility, accountability in your value chain. And that doesn't matter who you are, how big your company is, who you serve. It's the only thing that matters. So if anything, log in, even if your business is doing the early stage, fish on the deck flopping around sort of thing, look at it and try and understand why, right? Find out that your subscription costs are $1,100 a month because you added yet another SaaS tool that's going to break you through this revenue, plateau you've hit. And oh my God, the amount of money I've spent on subscriptions, right? We just cut $16,000 in annual subscription licenses. And this is not a joke, George. I run a data company. The most recent any of those tools had been used was 19 months prior to me checking. I run a data company. That is egregious. Like they should, Handmaid's Tale, like put me on the wall, right? Like it's gross negligence. So don't do what I do. I'm like the heart surgeon who steps out for a cigarette after surgery, right? It makes no sense. But that was, 16 grand. Okay. We're large enough now to where that's not make or break. But even still, like, that's not an excuse, right? So review your numbers, know what your margin performance is, even if it sucks, even if it's red and has a negative or parentheses around it, understand what it is and obsess about it. But to your point, the relationship with data, you are very correct in calling that out. And I get customers all the time, say $500 million manufacturing firm, right? We are going to evolve into a position where we are only making decisions based off of our data. No, you're not. No, you're not. The point is to be data driven, not data mandated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's always exceptions to the rule. Business is not black and white as much as, so many book authors will tell you that it is. It's not true, right? If I log into my accounting software right now and filter my customers by margin performance, some of them at the top of our margin performance are my least favorite customers. They're the most difficult to work with. We have the most amount of back and forth and 11th hour changes. Some of them in sort of the middle of the pack are my absolute favorite customers. And I know that they're only middle of the pack because my team has decided collectively to put more into the relationship to propel them further, to deliver more value, to make them more crazy fans of us. And then, yes, capture that margin performance on the back end, right? But that's the art piece, right? You're taking a short-term hit to water the seeds, knowing that it's going to be your beanstalk, as opposed to, being okay with a bunch of healthy shrubs. You got to have a couple beanstalks when you scale a company. So, yeah, it's always going to be calculated art. That's the point. It's art that isn't purely driven by your gut microbiome.
1,000%.
It's art that has the backing of data to support it.
Well, and I think even to that analogy, it's art where you know what colors of paint that you have.
Right.
Like, because I'm going to call myself out, which unintentionally, I love everybody listening to this, where if you don't know what the paint colors are, i.e. your data, like if you're afraid to go look at the account, if you're afraid to go log in to the email software, then you're actually operating blind. But the story we tell ourselves is, oh, I can just fix it with more effort because it's going to hurt if I look. Not looking makes it hurt longer and makes it hurt worse because it's actually just confusing the information that's there. And so I love that you said that, because that's definitely, it was me, even like navigating a divorce and going through all this, where I was like, oh, I'll just go sign more clients. I'll go sign more clients. I'll go sign more clients. And then I was back in the bucket I was, because apparently God was like, you haven't learned the lesson yet. So I'm going to give it to you again. Here we go.
Yeah.
But it's really, really simple, because I think that that's where you blend the art and the science, right? Like if you're going to make art, and, I guess both Collin and I speak in metaphors and analogies, which is why you're making data fun. If I tell you to go make me dinner and I don't tell you what ingredients you have in the kitchen, well, you're screwed. If you don't know what pots and pans and things that are there, then you can't make it. And I think looking at your data brings to an awareness, like either what you need to go get at the grocery store, what you have way too much of, i.e. SaaS products, subscriptions, right? Like even me, streaming services, between having two kids, one that's 8 and one that's 20, I was like triple paying, because I'm like, why are you not on the same account? How did you manage to make a new account? My little boy figured out his freaking password on his iPad, and one day I got a charge for $1,000. And I was like, I can't even dispute this because it's Roblox. And I was like, why is this not locked down? But I was never looking, right? I think, for everybody listening, the way that you answered that question is so powerful. And I think for me to paint the picture for everybody, data isn't always just about numbers and money. The data can apply to you being upset that you're 15 pounds overweight or that you can't sleep at night. It can be, I'm inconsistent with my content. Well, okay, well, let's look at the process. Or I don't know where my leads are coming from. And all of these pieces give you an awareness. And I think as an entrepreneur, especially for people listening that tend to not have a team or a solopreneur, you do wear a lot of hats, right? You have a lot of them, from fulfiller to content producer to the idea person to the vision holder. but each one of those buckets has its own mechanisms or levers that you have to be aware of so you're not operating blind. And so I love the way that you describe that. It's really, really good.
To me, there are two types of entrepreneurs, and disagree with me if you do. There are those who become entrepreneurs for the vanity of it.
Yep.
Because especially our society in America rewards or applauds entrepreneurs. Those are the folks who exit the soonest.
Yep.
And by exit, I don't mean sell the business. I mean they get out of being an entrepreneur because they realize that vanity doesn't pay the bills.
Yep.
And this stuff is actually really hard.
Yep.
The other type of entrepreneur are the people who do it specifically for the grind.
Yep.
They know that they have better odds of creating a life that they want to create by trusting themselves versus a corporate mechanism or someone else to do it for them. And they actually look forward to the grind.
Yep.
Now, the beauty of it is you can start in that former camp and you can be a convert into the latter camp. And if you do, I think you'll be safe. Mm-hmm. But I've come across, so many folks who I've known. I grew up in Minneapolis, and Minneapolis it's a big, small town.
Yep.
So anytime someone, is getting going in their entrepreneur game, everyone hears about it. And you get that couple months where every time you see George, you're like, attaboy, George, that's so cool. Right on. Hey, thanks. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Cool. I love all the attention. Fast, go ahead 6 months. George has joined another real estate brokerage because he realized it's freaking hard. Right. But meanwhile, there's the quiet person who maybe didn't even tell people what they were doing, who just focused. And to your point, they looked at the data that they knew was going to be uncomfortable because they knew that they were the only person accountable for making that number not awful.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And those are the people who, you fast forward 5 years, 10 years, and you go, dang, George is killing it. Right. Why? Because he cared enough to navigate the grind every single day. Even when he didn't want to, even when he felt sick, even when he wanted to go on a vacation. I make a joke all the time. My target for North Labs exit is 2030, and maybe I'll take a week off in 2030 before I start the next thing, right? Unhealthy, I know, and it's also not true. Like I still take vacations and whatnot, but it's one of those things where like I've become so obsessed with the grind. I've become so obsessed with not having to report to a corporate structure. You and I worked for the largest corporation in the world. We worked for the Department of Defense.
Yep.
That is an insanely large business, right? And I think the reason why we went on this path is like, I have the discipline. I have the grit. I've been shot at. I've had explosions next to me. I've had, my face cut open by debris, all that stuff. I know that nothing can be worse than that. Mm-hmm. Even if my first business doesn't make it, my second business doesn't make it. Because newsflash for everyone listening, yes, I've sold one company and I run one today. That's 2. I've owned 7 companies, right? And most of them made very quick exits in the marketplace. I was just like, I either don't have the passion for it or my theory was incorrect. Who cares, right? Every famous entrepreneur out there has failed at stuff. Right. So it's solely dependent on your ability to embrace and learn to love the grind. However you have to do it, that's going to lead you to a successful future.
1,000%. And I want to define grind for everybody because I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I'm the guy who started because of leaving the military on a medical separation, who the grind felt easy, but then became about the vanity. And then ended up back in the grind, right? And so there was this oscillation between the two. Yep. And the third bucket that I also see, I was talking to a ton of entrepreneurs in this valley. We meet, there's 16 of us men that live here in Montana. Didn't know there were 16 of us that were entrepreneurs, but we're all men of faith. We meet together and I was like, they exist, right? The other one that I see is this bucket of people who claim that they're an entrepreneur, but they also are really just a W-2 employee for their own company, right? Where
They
there's
created
not
a day
that
job for themselves.
relationship with that thing. And I think I wanted to define grind for everybody, because the way that I look at it, it's like being a parent. Like, I love being a father. There is nothing more rewarding in the world for me than being a father. And at the same time, zero part of me 62 days in a row wanted to get up to a colicky baby at 3 a.m. and not sleep. And I was like, but no one else is coming to do this. And this is my responsibility to be a father. And that's how I look at entrepreneurship. It's like, I have this passion and vision of like raising this child. I'm the parent of this vision. And so when it cries and screams and has a dirty diaper, or for some of you, explosive diarrhea out of your bank account, there's only one person who can go in and clean that mess up. And I've fallen victim to this before, where even my team, my CEO, I'm like, how are you going to fix this? And I was like, this is not hers to fix. This is mine to fix.
Yeah.
Right. And so I wanted to give credence to what you said, because I think the grind is not just like grinding in work. It's almost like having a relationship with the responsibility required to have that quote unquote freedom, or to bring that vision to life. And it's separate than, just punching a clock or doing this job. And I think that that's a big way to look at it.
Well, it's important too, right? The grind is not busy work.
No.
So having a full calendar every single day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. does not mean that you're grinding. It means that you're busy, but busy might not be good, right? Busy work is different than deliberate work. Busy work is something that takes your time, that doesn't materially alter the direction of your business. Deliberate work doesn't need to be represented by 12 hours of meetings. It could be represented by an hour and a half of work on a Sunday to set things up for the next week, or to finally get, your new CRM stood up to at least be able to handle new opportunities, so you can begin the process of setting your operating procedures around that tool, whatever it might look like. So there's a very big difference there. I talk with entrepreneurs all the time who are like, yeah, I'm on my grind, man. I mean, it's like 14, 16, 18-hour days. And I'm like, look, that's awesome. But the most dangerous thing for an entrepreneur is burnout.
Yep.
Right. And I'm not saying don't work hard, because, it does. If you're putting in the right type of work, that's your best possible yield estimate in the future, is how much deliberate work you did. But just because you're busy doesn't mean you're being deliberate, and it doesn't mean you're paying attention to the right things as part of that grind. So that's another call out for your listeners, right? Especially as they're getting going. Just because your calendar is full doesn't mean you're working on the stuff you should be working on, right? And that's where that decision to hire comes in, is if there's something less valuable than an hour of your time running your business, you need to delegate it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I delegate most things in my life. People are like, oh yeah, man of the house, I'm going to mow the lawn, I'm going to trim the hedges, I'm going to replace my roof, I'm going to do all this stuff. I was a mechanic in the military as my first job. I love turning wrenches on cars. I love doing that stuff, but I also understand that me spending an hour on that versus an hour on deliberate work within my business has a very different yield curve. And I focus on maximizing my yield curve with my time. And I think I would encourage everyone to think about their lives like that too.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like you and I have the same relationship with busy work, because we were both in the United States military.
Oh, for sure. Half that stuff is unnecessary, but to credit the military, what organization in the world, anywhere, even a fifth the size of the DoD, could move as fast as the DoD when it needed to? But there's a lesson in that, right? The lesson in the DoD that I've applied to my businesses is you delegate as far down the ranks as you possibly can. The group commander who has been in for 35 years, God bless him or her, got a full bird on their shoulder, right? They're not the ones kicking down doors and shooting them up. They're not the ones flying the planes most of the time to the conflict areas, right? They're pushing that down as far as possible. And allowing those people to operate with some degree of autonomy within guardrails to get the job done.
1,000%.
And that's I think a really valuable thing that I learned while I was.
It's a massive lesson, because, you know, like the busy work that you're talking about is like filling your calendar with trips, driving back and forth to the gym every day, but never going inside. Like,
right.
You can drive by the gym for 12 hours, but like, it ain't going to work itself out.
Right.
And, you know, I think, and I'll give credit all day, like for anybody listening to this on this podcast, at least 210 times I've talked about needle movers and, you know, X and Y, and like, go pick up Mike McAllister's book, Clockwork, and pull it out. Like, he is a masterclass, because like, even for me, and to your point earlier about data changes. So do our core responsibilities and needle movers as we evolve and as we grow. And it's not this rigid thing. It's this symbiotic relationship that's constantly adjusting. And I even like, I love the throughput of data that we're in, because I'm looking at things differently, because like, even as like a podcast host, or I coach all day, every day. And my calendar used to be open. Now it's just full of coaching calls and podcasts. I'm like, yeah, but those are the things that bring me passion and also allow me to do it. And I want to make one note on what you said to everybody listening. If you like mowing the lawn because it fills your bucket and you get creative ideas, he's not saying don't go mow the lawn.
Correct.
But what he is saying is, don't let your default be, I'm going to do everything, and take that time when you can look at it differently and be like, oh, if I did offload that, or if I did hire that out, I could utilize that hour intentionally, not on busy work, but on intentional needle moving work or foundational work or something inside of the business. And so I had an early mentor a long time ago, and I won't drop my name because most people don't agree with them, and I'm friends with him, don't do business with him. But he looked to me when I started out as an entrepreneur, and he said that same lesson. And he's like, your biggest problem is that you're addicted to MWAs. And I'm like, what the heck are MWAs? He's like, minimum wage activities.
Ooh. Yes.
And I was like, oh, and he's like, and when all you do is minimum wage activities, the only thing you can make is minimum wage. And there's nothing wrong with minimum wage activities. He's like, but you'll spend 12 hours on a Saturday with no kid, mowing the lawn, cleaning the house, field daying it like you're still in the Marine Corps, and then getting upset that I'm ahead of you. And he's like, if you just hired that out, it would cost you like $200 and you can go do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, and then like, that's where my first stage of business started to kind of like come in and be in this relationship. And I think now, and I'm going to ask you a question about this, I think a lot of the things that we used to have to hire people out for, now we have tools like AI that we can put an input into it in 5 minutes, still get our rocks off because we're still doing it, except we're getting the result back, and it's $20 a month. Like, is that a fair assessment?
Oh my gosh. I use Claude, I use ChatGPT for everything. Gemini within Google, we're a Google shop for our email. Gemini it's fine, but it's there, right? Mm-hmm. And now we'll get into caveats of those systems later, I'm sure. But like, think about it this way, right? Just to build on your point, the biggest lesson that I've learned in the last 12 months, actually, this is fairly, actually probably the last 6 months, very recent. Talked to a guy who has sold businesses throughout his career, young, California-based, 45 years old. He sold $800 million worth of businesses. He is a legend in my mind. And his big thing is like, he is a numbers extremist, even more than the guy running the data shop, right? He is like, I know everything all the time within all of my businesses, which I think is insane, but he's an insane sort of guy. But what he told me was, as an entrepreneur, yes, you're a visionary, but more than anything on the operational side, you are a capital allocator. And until you understand your role is to allocate capital for growth and progress toward your vision. And yes, sometimes you're allocating capital to you, especially in early days. You're effectively paying yourself to get the job done. But eventually there comes a point of diminishing returns, and you need to decide where you could better allocate capital to move you toward your vision. And he said that, and it sounds obvious, but that to me was like glass shattering. Oh my gosh, yes, I'm a visionary, but being a visionary doesn't mean anything unless you're making progress toward your goals. And that's why people are always like, oh, I have this great idea for a business. Whoop-de-frickin' do. An idea is free. You have this supercomputer between your ears. And yes, you're going to generate ideas. That's amazing. Now, what are you going to do about it?
Mhm.
Because the people who make it are the people who are like, yeah, I think that's worth it. And I'm going to invest $500 of capital. I'm going to allocate that in the most efficient way possible to try and make that needle even shake a little bit to show me that I'm on the right course. Right.
Mhm.
And then it just snowballs from there.
Here's a little, and this is a complete non sequitur, but you know, my guilty pleasure is like when I'm killing time, I'll YouTube shorts all day. And I have this guilty pleasure of watching all the watch flippers in New York City.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like all of it. I'm not even a watch guy, right? I rock my Garmin, right? I have one nice watch that's been worn once in a decade because it stays in a box. But other than that, I'm not. But watching these guys flip $100,000 watch for an $1,100 profit to then utilize that little bit of money in a different way is such this grand perspective shift to the point that you just made, because it's really capital, like our time, our money, our energy.
Yeah.
And I think a mistake I see entrepreneurs make, and I'm calling myself out here, is, oh, everything is about this big home run, right? Like, oh, if I just make another 10 grand or another 15 grand, then I can use it. But it's like, if you don't value every one of those dollars as an asset and something that can work for you, no matter what that number is, it's never going to be able to do the work for you.
Yeah.
And I would submit that if you don't even look at $100 as a piece of capital of like, how can I make this work for me, buy more time, create more leverage, it will not and cannot work for 1,000 or 10,000 or 50,000 because you're missing the point of leverage.
Yeah.
So I love that statement that he made. That is so good.
Yeah. I mean, look, I was recruited to play college level baseball. I probably would have ridden the bench, right? Like I was an undersized second baseman. And guess how many home runs I hit in my entire baseball career? One. I was the guy who would more often than not get you a single to opposite field. I would tease right field and we would drive in runs. And that's good enough, right? And to your whole point, like entrepreneurs who are actively inspired to build something, like that is such a cool, I still remember, like every time I think of a new idea, I'm like, oh dude, this could be big. Like you get so excited, you start foaming at the mouth. But then everyone sees these headlines of the $1 billion unicorns and freaking SpaceX and Amazon and all of these organizations out there. And they're like, man, am I really okay? Like if I drive 15,000 in revenue this year, like, is that okay? Yes, because it's 15,000 in revenue that you wouldn't have driven if you would have just stayed scrolling on TikTok, right? Like, and it's just the first chapter. So many companies start off as tiny little seedlings, and you see this overnight success 20 years later. They're like, oh, who are these guys bursting onto the scene? You don't understand the sleepless nights and the lessons they've had to learn and all that stuff. It's like, move the needle. If you're really inspired to take the plunge, do it. Like we live in an era where you can be side hustling while you're still rocking a day job, give your employer full attention during work hours, and then grind the hell out of something at night when the kids are asleep, weekends, whatever, right? If you're a college age person listening, oh my God, are you like, you have the best possible opportunity right now to fail and have zero substantial negativity come out of it, right? Because you have to be resource constrained because you're a broke college kid. And guess what? You'll still be a broke college kid if the thing fails. And if you're in the military listening to this, oh my God, because you are collecting a paycheck, give the military your full commitment, go and get Airman of the Year, Marine of the Year, whatever, right? But now you have a paycheck coming in. And so what are you doing when you're off duty? You're riding your motorcycle, if you're like me, you're drinking beer and probably talking to pretty girls, whatever the case may be, grind it out, man. And especially the veterans. The veterans have grind literally hardwired into them from the military. That's the biggest gift that Uncle Sam gives you, is the ability and the almost the satisfaction that after you get through boot camp and your advanced training and stuff like that, you almost find satisfaction in the grind. Like, embrace that. Start something small. Start a $15,000 a year business and watch it turn into a $50K a year business, $500K a year business, and then a multi-million-dollar business. That's what I did. I started my first company. The first lines of code I pushed for my first company, I was hanging in a hammock in the back of a tail cone of a C-130 with 82 Navy SEALs on board over a super high secure, DoD internet, which I'm sure it was not all that kosher.
Yep.
Right. But I knew that I had a safety net if everything went kaboom.
Yep. Yeah.
That's my soapbox.
I actually think that's a perfect soapbox to start landing the plane, and because you used a plane analogy, but I'll share as well. I needed that reminder too, because when I started in entrepreneurship, I was on active duty still, but I was just documenting my journey of like overcoming my bulimia and teaching myself how to cook. And they're like, we're going to medically separate you. Well, I didn't know how long that was going to take. And so this like blog turned into this, like, I was still active duty Marine, staff NCO, right? I was the E7 select. So I was like at work from 4:30 until 7:00 at night. But the moment I pull into my driveway, I was writing a blog. I was posting on Facebook. I had till like 11 p.m. And then I'd go to work on my lunch breaks. I'd run it from our secure TSI network. And I'm like, I need to create a window here and a VPN because I'm not supposed to be doing this. And then I'll never forget though, like when my papers came and I got quote unquote discharged from the military, I wasn't on day one. I was on 18 months in. Yeah. And then I launched a digital product and was like, dude, your first ever digital product made $1 million. Like, you did it in a day. I'm like, no. I wrote a blog and an email and at least 6 posts a day, every single day for 18 months, and never asked anybody for anything. I just helped. I responded to every comment, every email, all of it. And then they're like, what'd you do? I'm like, then one of them asked me to make an ebook. I'm like, so I made an ebook and then I gave it to him for free because he asked for it. He's like, what are you doing, idiot? I want to pay for this. I'm like, why would you pay for it? It's on my website. He's like, because that's what people do. Upload it to this website called ClickBank. I did what a customer told me to do.
Wow.
And I put it on ClickBank and he's like, charge $37 for it and then email all of us and tell us you had it. And bro, I'll never forget this. I'm sitting in the office and I opened the ClickBank app, CB app on my phone. This was like early on, like 2011, 2012. And I thought it was broken because I made my yearly salary on day one. And then the next day it was up, but it was like, I used all that side time to grind. I wrote every recipe. I photographed everyone. And by the way, my first photos look like a dog threw up on the screen for like the first 3 years of food photos. And they became my most popular recipes on Pinterest, repinned like 3 billion times. And it looks like my 8-year-old could take a better photo, but it was just that process. So there's so much weight to like what you said. And then I think for everybody understanding, there's milestones and markers. Like, I love that you want to lose 100 pounds. Go lose 5 and then lose 5 more and then lose 5 more. Like, value every dollar. Like, go make 10 grand, then make 12, then make 14, and like kill this disillusion that greatness is built with a hockey stick. Because I will tell you, hockey sticks do not last.
No,
they don't.
No.
And most of the time when it crashes lower than when the hockey stick started because of all the overhead and all the noise and the mistakes. And so like the amount of value in what you just shared for people is tremendous. And so I just had to give it credence because it's so good.
I appreciate it. And I'm proud of you, bro. That's an awesome story. I hope you're immensely proud of that. I mean, even just moving your ego aside to listen to a customer and be like, you know what? It's worth a shot. Right? Because so many of those moments come and go. And a lot of people don't do anything about it. My story for that is North Labs was about 6 months old.
Okay.
It was a one-man band.
Yep.
And I had part-time help from a gal who's no longer with me, who I adore. She moved in, she got a crazy offer, and I was like, leave, right? Like, you have to. You have to leave. I will make you leave. I'll fire you if you don't take this job, right? And I had been doing LinkedIn posts around how defense contractors ought to be modernizing their data in a super regulated environment to drive better product efficiency for their government contracts. Like, total niche, right? Like, if you run a vet clinic, you ain't reading that blog post, right? And sure as shit, 6 months in, a very large defense contractor reached out and said, hey, I saw your blog post. He's like a senior program manager for a group that builds warships. And he was like, we have this problem. Can you fix it? He's like, we'll set aside $1 million that you can burn toward. We're not going to give it to you out of the gates, little one, but you can burn toward $1 million cap. Can you do it? And of course, in my mind, initially, I'm like, I can't do that, right? But of course, you say yes. You always say yes, right? If there's anything to take away from today, just say yes and figure it out. And it's like, yeah, I did. And I had to go hire 8 people, and I had to carry their payroll for a month, which was very painful while we were getting onboarded with this customer. Like, I burned up all my cash reserves just having people, right? But we got onboarded onto this project. We made $1 million. That turned into, I think, $3.5 million, which at the time I was like, this is the most money I'll ever make. I didn't grow up wealthy, right? I had just, gotten out of the military a couple of years prior. I'm like, this is the most money I'll ever make. Like, this is it. But had I ignored that email, had I said, yeah, but I'm sort of a one-man band, that would have gone away. So just looking for those openings. There's always an opening. And you being, someone of faith, me as someone who sort of had a bad relationship with my faith for a long time. My best friend was killed in the military, and it was sort of like, okay, what's this all about? Right. And I had to find my way back. But now in hindsight, I'm like, those little openings, you gotta take them.
That's that is like one of the most powerful fortune cookie nuggets everybody could take from this episode, is that they're always there, but we tend to not look at them.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, there's always a crack of light in that. And the funniest thing is, as we land this, that whole first business became one of the biggest food blogs in the world. And I've told this story. Every single thing I did was because a customer asked for it, not because I set out to do it.
Yeah.
Because I did that ebook, and then someone's like, you should write a real cookbook. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Well, a week later, I was at a conference giving a keynote, and I saw a publisher, and I was like, hey, you're going to publish my book. He's like, your audience isn't big enough. And I was like, well, too bad. What do I got to do? And I was like, I'm doing this. And he's like, well, I can't give in advance. You're going to have to fund it. I'm like, okay. And he's like, you'll never be a New York Times bestseller. Well, 22-week New York Times bestseller. And then, but I say that to everybody because your point of like you just made, it's these micro moments where we say yes and we get to become the person that walks through it, but you also learn and you collect data to tie all of this together and you make adjustments.
Yeah.
And you keep walking this path. And my faith was the same way. It's like the military is like growing up, not in it, and then kind of finding it. And the only reason I had it was because it was the only day I had off at boot camp was to go to church. I'm sorry, God, like we've made our pieces now. And then after seeing all of that, I'm like, I can't. And then, fast forward a couple of years. And then like, now I'm like, love you with all my heart, Jesus. Like, thank you for bringing me home. And thank you for loving me the whole time. But it's these micro moments that we forget 100%. About. And it's the journey, man. Like it's the journey. And so there's this like, I could genuinely have a podcast with you every week. Just going to say that publicly. I like have loved this conversation, and data, not data. Like it gets me excited about data and the way that you shared this. And so where is the best place for people to like check out you, check out North Labs, get a hold of you?
Yeah. So our website is northlabs.io or .com, dealer's choice. I don't have social media other than LinkedIn. You can find me there at /in/Collin with 2 L's, Graves like dead people. Always happy to connect. Again, I've been in this space a long time, not only on the data side, y'all, but in terms of building businesses, scaling businesses, selling businesses, investing in businesses, I want to make my hard lessons more accessible to people, and hope that they can avoid some of those lessons. There's no way to avoid all of them. You just have to. But my sort of life goal is like, how do I mentor people to create generational wealth for themselves, for their families, to build, to build to their highest potential, while keeping values and virtues in mind, being a good person, doing good with what they generate, and still having fun, right? Like life, we're only here for a brief period. And how great would it be if we can, sit in our final days and say, like, I created more value than I extracted from the world. I touched more people than I could have ever imagined. And like, that's the point of entrepreneurship. If you run a salon or a dog grooming business, or you're turning wrenches on cars, like, you're impacting people's lives and hopefully making darn good money. And there are always ways to improve that aspect. But being able to help a lot of people just as an individual, I think in modern society, it's the best possible way to do it, because revenue means that you can invest more in relationships and social bonds and doing good. And I think if everyone carries that mentality with them while still, enjoying the fruits of that grind, the world is going to be far better off because you're in it.
Brother, I couldn't agree more. And for everybody listening, I'm going to bully him into this, but we're doing another episode sometime in the future, because I have
100%.
So much more to ask him, and I'm going to bring him into our ecosystem and keep him. I'm just basically like adopting you and also strong arming you to stay in my ecosystem. So I tend to do it publicly, so then if you say no, then I have witnesses that it wasn't me. And they're like, I agree, George. But it truly was. And, I think for everybody listening, we'll have everything linked in the show notes. I'm not on LinkedIn, because you guys all know I'm banned for life. And it's a funny story that's short, but we don't have to repeat it here. So connect with them on LinkedIn. Check out North Labs. And I think Collin would probably nod to this, that I'd use today as the permission slip, and also the gentle nudge and a reminder to like build a relationship with your data, and whatever that means for you, right? Whether it's logging into your accounting, once a day, looking at the bank account once a day, looking at your numbers, but it's not something that you fix once. It's a relationship that you build over time. And I think there was so much wisdom shared today in the lens of data, in the lens of business, in the lens of entrepreneurship, in the lens of the grind and your relationship with it, and also celebrating every victory and utilizing your time and utilizing your capital, meaning your capital, your energy, your money. And whatever it was today that landed for you, don't let it become shelf help, right? Like, it's not I thought about it, I did it once. It's like, whatever that piece was, earn the right to add another piece, but go flex that muscle, go practice that muscle. For some of us, it might be looking at our bank account every day and committing to it for 30 days, just 3 minutes, until it becomes this ingrained habit. For some of us, it might be like, I should probably look at the fact that I've been posting content for 6 months and I've never once looked at the data. And there's probably something in there that says, every time I post this works and people call me. And every time I post this, nobody calls. And starting to build a relationship with those things, because Collin said this in the show, there's not an entrepreneur in any bucket at any level that should not be building a relationship with data. And that data is what's going to help your intuition and help your desire to make sure that you are getting the fruits of your labor. If you put this in here and it creates more of this, well, guess what? Double down on it. Or maybe you've never read Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz. Well, take that book of where you're supposed to spend your time and then track your data out the back of it and start to build this relationship. Because the more you know, and we say this to companies all the time, if you can't measure it, you can't scale it. Because if you can't measure it, you can't outsource it. If you can't measure it, you can't have more of it. And start looking at your business and whatever metaphor or analogy works for you. Maybe it's raising a child, or maybe your business is a beautiful Michelin star piece that you're putting in the oven, but you have to know what ingredients you have. You have to know what processes they're going into, so that when you get the recipe and it doesn't taste good, you don't quit cooking forever. You just go back into the kitchen and realize that you used salt instead of sugar. So your cookies taste like trash. Great. You can still make cookies, but just swap the ingredient. And so that's my invitation for everybody today. And so Collin, just any closing words, any wisdom you want to drop on people before we wrap the show?
I think just going back to what we talked about earlier, regardless of where you are in your journey, there are two things that you need to have top of mind at all times. One, you are a capital allocator, and that's going to look different for everyone, but understanding that that's your primary job will create a sense of freedom in you it created a light bulb moment for me. And then secondly, enjoy the grind for what it is, not what it creates, not what it produces for you. Enjoy the grind for what it is, but make sure the grind has an impact on your vision. Because the only thing that makes a vision come to reality, to fruition, is deliberate grind. So embrace it, enjoy the hard parts, because it's all a part of the book you're writing for yourself. And everyone's book looks slightly different. But don't use others as a comparative measure of your success. You are the only one accountable to creating a reality from the vision that you have. There is no one to bail you out in the world of entrepreneurship, and that's a good thing. Yeah. Because you trusted yourself enough to start the journey. Now trust yourself enough to see it through.
I'm not adding anything on that except rewind, listen to it again, and that's where the plane lands for today, everybody. So, as I always say, remember that relationships will always beat algorithms, and I always end it with the most important one is with yourself, and Collin has given you nuggets of wisdom to chew on with that one. And so I will either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs, but either way, we're out.